Welcome to Mornings with Patricia. Happy Friday. Well, it has been a perfectly wonderful, stormy Oregon Thursday. And I have stayed inside most of the day, and it's just been a nice, restful day. So, I wanted to talk about our mind today. And I'm going to read from this book, Living Deeply: The Art of Science of Transformation in Everyday Life. And it's based on a decade-long research program at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. So, Living Deeply. Let me take my glasses off to read. So, neurons and neural connections adjust in response to new activities, especially activities that are repeated. Repetitive behaviors, whether functional or dysfunctional, actually change the way our brains work. In the review of the literature in 2004, Julie Markham and William Greenough note a number of important findings that may have relevance to transformative practice. For example, after injury, a process called synaptic reorganization can help people regain important functions. Synaptic pathways that are used frequently are strengthened, while those that are rarely used can become weaker. Entirely new pathways can be formed. Moreover, recent research shows that in some parts of the brain, including the all-important hippocampus, neurogenesis, or the formation of new nerve cells, continues throughout life, which is, I'm just going to take a little pause here, which is very, very interesting because we used to think that it stopped after a certain age, and now we know that that's not true. Functions can be transferred from one part of the brain to another, and the brain's baseline functioning can itself be altered. Since the brain continuously reorganizes itself, repeated transformative practice may allow us to consciously shape our brains and our behaviors. So, interesting. They say it takes 21 days to make a new habit, and I'd been working around the house and feeling a little sweaty today, so excuse me for. 21 days to make or break a habit, and it's about following your thoughts or thinking new thoughts. So, and I don't have the numbers, but something like, I don't remember, something like 95% of our thoughts are the same that we had yesterday. We just don't realize that, and we think them, and we react to them, and we have emotions around them, and we think that somehow they're new, and they're not new. They're not new at all. But how do we know they're not new? So one of the things to do in a practice is to, when you think a thought that causes a big emotion in you, ask yourself at that point, is this a new thought? If it's not a new thought, how often do I think this thought? And think back and try to think, have I been thinking this thought for 2 weeks? How often does this thought upset me? Also, do they have partnership thoughts? So, for example, if you're worried about something, it may generate thoughts in a different way. Notice the thoughts you want to keep. When you're happy, when you're content, when you're in gratitude, those are the thoughts that are okay to think over. Another thing I had read recently, I can't remember the author, but they were talking about the mind, the brain, and how thoughts work. And so they did this example. They said, so take, for instance, the Taj Mahal. So the Taj Mahal, if I'm thinking about the Taj Mahal, what do I think about the Taj Mahal? What do I know about the Taj Mahal? Okay, well, we probably all know what, the Taj Mahal looks like from the outside. Most of us know that. We've seen pictures if we haven't been there, right? I didn't get to do that on my trip to India. One of these days I will do that. So, but then you encourage the brain to think even more, and you say, well, what else can I know about the Taj Mahal? And you start investigating. You start using your mind and your thoughts to investigate and dig deeper and deeper into whatever it is you're thinking about. And because the mind likes to be engaged, but engage the mind in a way that is creative, is thinking new thoughts, is creating new synaptic activity. because this expands the mind. It also helps with memory. So travel down those pathways of asking, what more can I know about this? And then you become engaged in that practice. If you are thinking thoughts that bother you, or thoughts of fear, another practice is to go ahead and write them down. Write them down and date it. And notice tomorrow. Notice if you have the same thought, and date it again, and do the practice for a couple of weeks. And pretty soon you start to ask the question, well, I have been afraid of this, and I've thought this thought for 2 weeks, and what has really happened around it? Have my worst fears been realized? Is there another possibility? Because sometimes, we live in a world that seems to be dualistic, right? Everything around us seems to be dualistic. So we think it's, either good or bad or hot or cold. And we don't really, our minds are not trained to think down what the Buddhists call like the middle way. That there are more than two opportunities, or pathways, and so you have to train the mind to start thinking along those terms, and then it starts to realize, oh, okay, there's not just hot or cold. Oh, I forgot. There's warm. There's lukewarm. There's freezing cold, right? Or, what would the world, what would whatever it is be like if it didn't have temperature at all? Oh my goodness. Right? What does no temperature at all mean? Is there such a thing? Where would that live? Is that possible? And you start to generate new patterns of thinking in the brain, new neural pathways. So it's really interesting if you can engage the mind like that, right? You start to, well, so for instance, people have always told me, I am surprised at what you remember. I'm surprised at what you know, or how you can pick out resources, of things you've read. And I think it's because I do engage my mind like that a lot. And also, I have this technique I do. When I read something that I think is really interesting, I do two things. Number one, I try to connect it to other things that I know right at the time I'm reading it. So, for example, if I'm reading about the Taj Mahal, right, and I didn't think I was going to use that later, but I'm reading about the Taj Mahal and that questioning about the Taj Mahal, then I start to connect it with other things like, oh, my trip to India, and we stayed at the Taj Mahal Hotel, which is different, right? But there's an association. So if you can make associations, then you start to build this mind map. And it can get really, really large, but here's how you access the mind map. Here's how I access it. If you're my age, maybe even a little younger, a little older, you'll remember a time in libraries that they had card catalogs, right? You pulled out the drawers and you looked it up, and they had all these cards, and you would go and find the book. So that's what I do. It's a sort of index in my mind, I catalog it, and then when I want something, I look through, there it is, and then it takes me to my mind map. And that is not as difficult as you might think, because you can just imagine the schematic in your mind, what that looks like. The thing is, when you do stuff like that, you also get this, the neural connectivity, because you are asking your mind to catalog and receive and retrieve information in a new way, perhaps in what you're used to. So why is any of this important? Why am I going on and on and on talking about this today? Well, I think because I see, myself too sometimes, but I see a lot of people get stuck. A sort of depression, if you like, but, sort of ennui, a sort of state of nothing's happening. And how could that be possible when you have this thing called your mind? Oh my goodness, that was, that was one of the cats that just ran across the screen. Hello. Oh boy, that is funny. Okay. So, well, isn't that funny how every time that I mention something, like nothing's happening or something else, one of the animals or cats will come up. It's like there's an energy in the house that responds to the word, the spoken word. Well, and that's true too, that this house and everything in it does respond to that. We've set up energy in the house that way. But so, Buddha, please. Okay, just a few more minutes. So Buddha's really upset. That's Bruce Senior's cat, because he usually is in the computer room, and we have the little chicks in the computer room, and it is access denied. So he gives us the stink eye on a regular basis and has some interesting little behaviors. Why, how could we be in the doldrums, or how could we be in a state of nothing happening when we have this amazing thing called the mind? You think a computer is amazing? You should investigate your mind, what it knows, what it wants to know, what it can think up. Incredible, just incredible. So if you engage in yourself, engage in your mind today, wherever you're at. It doesn't matter whether you're out and about, at home, at work, whatever, right? And you can do other interesting things with this. So let's say that you really struggle with judgment, being judgmental, and you're at work or you're out and you notice somebody, and either somebody you know or a stranger, and whether it's something they're wearing or how they're acting, and all of a sudden your mind thinks up a judgment statement. You ask your mind, how do I know that? How do I know that for sure? What do I know about this person, right? And then your mind kind of goes into shell shock and goes, what? You're questioning me. Well, yeah, I'm following you with a question because, if it's not interesting information, if it's not factual information, then we don't need that kind of stuff in our mind. And pretty soon the mind will stop synapsing that way, and it's almost like you cut off that juncture. So, just have fun. Just have fun with your mind. My goodness. What an amazing gift we've been given. Find new ways to use your mind. Now, I have told this to my students, and I have shared this at Sacred Space. We think about our five senses. And, you think about your eyes as being able to read. And I was taking a class, it may have been during hypno training with Larry, and there had been some Japanese students who had been doing a study, and they found they could read with their ear. And so what they would do is they would flip the pages, fan the pages, and they tested them. These were things that they didn't know, books they hadn't read, and they would test them and they would know the information. So if your ears can read a book, what can your mind do? Can your mind do other things than think? What would that be like? What could your mind do besides think? That might be an interesting conversation to have together sometime in person for those of you who I get to see. Okay, well, it's Friday. You have the weekend. And just a reminder, a little plug for Sacred Space Spiritual Center. We're having the community potluck and planning what our space is going to evolve into, what we want to do with it. And so that's at 5 p.m. on Saturday. And then tomorrow night, which is your Friday night, I'll be doing a satsang with Rebecca. So come, and we're going to investigate, find the door to your inner self, your higher self. So anyway, thank you for watching, and thank you for continuing to share and spreading the joy. So 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, I love myself, and I love you. Have a happy Friday and a beautiful weekend. I'll see you next week.